How you doing?
Hanging in there.
All right. For those who just joined, we're still trying to figure out, there might be two Zoom links. So just give me 1 second.
Good morning, folks. We're going to go ahead and get started. We might have a couple of Zoom links live, so we're trying to consolidate those meetings, but in respect of all your time, I definitely want to get going, and we are recorded per usual. So happy Friday, December 2nd. Welcome to the 2022 MAWS Annual General Meeting. My name is Jen Segadelli. I use she, her pronouns. I am the outgoing president of MAWS, and very excited to usher in new leadership and new board structures, and all of which we will talk a bit about today. But the first thing I wanted to do was introduce our new executive director. I say new, but technically she actually joined us like last winter. But this is your first chance to meet V in an annual general meeting style. So I want to introduce V. She's been our executive director for coming up on a year here pretty soon. As far as we know, the first executive director that MAWS has had, and she is even more incredible than I could ever articulate. V has always had a passion for helping others, and is currently attending the University of Washington as a first-generation college student. She focuses her studies on public and global health. She joined MAWS with a desire to help marginalized communities gain access to quality and affordable healthcare in an equitable way. She experienced her first birth at age 11 when her sister was born, but talks about how she was appalled by the injustice that her mother faced from the hospital staff. And so she has always been a supporter of midwifery and the work that we do. Her experience includes working as a CNA in assisted living and in-home care, interning at various hospitals and nursing facilities around the greater Seattle area, as well as administrative work in larger nonprofit hospitals and local organizations. She has worked with patients from many diverse backgrounds, which enables her to connect with community and accommodate different needs. And she was born in Vietnam and immigrated to the US with her immediate family when she was 5 years old, but often travels back to her hometown, and has 2 rescue dogs, Coco and Lewis. And honestly, I couldn't say enough fantastic things about V. She has a tremendous vision for the direction of this organization, in addition to just keeping us afloat on a day-to-day basis. And is running a robust intern program with University of Washington Bothell interns. So we are just so grateful to have V join us. And V, I'm going to pass this over to you.
Alrighty, thank you, Jen, for the kind words. I don't know if that was all deserved, but I'm happy to be here and I'm excited to continue to see MAWS grow and to grow with the organization and our members. And so, like Jen said, I am currently pursuing my Master's of Health Administration. I have a background in public and global health and health education and promotion, and I'm passionate about health equity and reproductive and birth justice. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and my identities are immigrant, Vietnamese, African American, and cis. And so let's quickly go over the agenda for today. We are going to do this is our welcome. We're going to do a land and labor acknowledgement, go over our accomplishments, as well as some of our goals for 2023. Review our board of directors, say goodbye to the outgoing ones and welcome our incoming ones. Go over the retreat report that we had last month with the board, and do a quick treasure report with Kristen Eggleston, and then committee reports, and then we'll hear from Smooth Transitions, and we'll close it out. All righty. So before we get started, we would like to do a land and labor acknowledgement. We acknowledge that all of us are residing on unceded ancestral lands of the Coast Salish people, and we wish to pay respect to elders past and present. We recognize that the land we occupy touches on the shared waters of tribes and bands within the Duwamish, Squamish, Puyallup, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations. We are grateful to be guests in these lands and commit to show solidarity for the continued fight for Indigenous sovereignty. It is vitally important to us to acknowledge the territory where we live and work, as it is a step towards supporting Indigenous peoples. We encourage all of you to educate yourself on how you can support Indigenous communities around you so that we can continue this work. All righty, Jen, take it away.
I'm going to breeze through these a little bit quickly because all of the committees will also share their individual committee accomplishments, and will do a much better job detailing those than I will in a kind of 10,000-foot view here. But we had a very busy 2022 with a lot of change and shift and growth, and it was painful in moments and really fruitful at the end. And so we are grateful for the growing pains of that. As I mentioned, we hired our first ever executive director, and she's more amazing than we could have dreamed of. The QMP has worked really hard under the leadership of Melanie Dixon and Louisa Severin to streamline processes and address a significant backlog of issues with regards to the QMP. The Legislative Policy Committee passed Substitute Senate Bill 5765, which is expanding the scope of licensed midwives to include prescriptive authority, which to our knowledge is the first bill of its kind to pass in the nation with LM scope of practice for prescriptions. The Legislative and Policy Committee also maintained the licensing cap that keeps our licensing fees not $2,500 a year, and did so by becoming an actual line item in the governor's budget. So a significant recognition by the governor of our state of the value of midwives. Our CE committee has made tremendous offerings this year, and has begun trainings for scope expansion, and will continue to do so. They also took a really significant shift in their focus on equity to ensure that they're increasing their pay to speakers, and we are paying speakers appropriately for their time, and invested in equity training for speakers. So we now have a video that we send out to speakers to help them understand our values and mission, so that when they prepare presentations, it is in alignment. The MAWS Data Committee published a journal article in the OB Green Journal, also what we believe to be the first of its kind in terms of midwifery data published in an OB journal. That is all MAWS data. So that is all of you and everything that you've contributed over the years. to be put in a national obstetrics journal. And I want to give a shout out to the authors, Elizabeth Nethery, Dr. Wendy Gordon, and Audrey Levine. I'm sure they will talk more about it when Data gives their recap. But that is just a little bit of the view of what we've been busy doing. A lot of big shifts and a lot of big accomplishments in 2022. And I really couldn't be more proud of the fact that we did it a bit on a shoestring of a board, frankly, for the last year or so. So I will pass it over to V to talk about our vision for 2023 and the work that is to come, because I think it is a really exciting future here. Oh, V, you're muted. Sorry.
Okay. In 2023, some of our goals are to, well, our biggest goal is to start a 501c3 nonprofit branch so that we can apply for federal grants, apply for national grants, and as well as local grants. And so that we can, work to support education and promotion of midwifery, and support students, midwives who are wanting to go into this work, but are struggling financially, and that's something that we want to help them with in whatever capacity that we're able to. And we want to continue applying for grants that we qualify for. Obviously, once we have our 501c3 established, we will qualify for a lot more. But currently, Louisa and Siri are working on the IMI, Institute for Medicaid Innovation, Midwifery Learning Collaborative. And we are also working to apply for the Birth Equity Project. And then as far as, doing other community engagement, we want to work more closely with Indigenous, Black, Hispanic, and Asian birth workers on how we can support them and their community. We don't want to take over. We don't want to occupy that space, but we want to support and uplift them. And then if some of you may have noticed, if you're subscribed to our email, I've been trying to send out monthly e-newsletters. And so I'm going to continue that. And, if anyone has anything that they want to promote, any good educational information, any events happening that you think your peers would find interesting, please send it my way and I can upload that to our monthly newsletters as well. And then, as Jen mentioned briefly, we do host internships, student internships. We mainly work with UW-Bothell and their fieldwork program. So they're all health studies students, and we host them for a quarter. So we get new students every quarter. Some of them have chosen to stay on for a little bit longer to continue their work with MAWS. But they've been amazing, and it's been really enriching, getting to see these different ideas and getting to encourage them to go to explore these different paths. And then I left these blanks are intentional. I wanted to, offer these ideas to our membership and our community. And if anyone has any ideas that they can think of that, MAWS should do, that they want to see happen in 2023 with us, please feel free to let us know. We are here to support you, and so your voice matters to us. Alrighty, and now we will go to the board of directors. We want to give a shout out to our outgoing board members. They have been on the board for so long and have done so much, even in the times of COVID, and they've really struggled to stay afloat, but we're coming out of it, and So Jen, I don't know if you want to say a few words now or save it until the end.
I'll do it at the end. Thanks, Bea.
Okay, all righty. And then with that said, we would like to welcome our incoming board members. We have elected our new executive committee and the rest of our board as well. And so we're so excited to have, you know, more diversity on our board, more different backgrounds, different knowledge, different experiences. And so I'm excited for the new years to come. Okay. Now, Louisa will be giving the retreat report.
Thanks, Bea. I can report that we had a really lovely annual board retreat about a month ago. We were all together with the exception of our beloved outgoing Vice President, Jessica Swan, who is off to nursing school, and also a couple of our new board members. We had a great and very rich discussion about the journey that MAWS has been on in the last 12 to 18 months. A really good, rich discussion about potential changes to our board structure and the way the board operates, with a view to increasing representation, increasing making the board work more sustainable and more equitable as well. So you know, the fact that we were not able to be joined by Jen, your cat is climbing the wall.
I know.
The fact that we had a couple of board members, new incoming board members, who weren't able to join us because of work commitments, I think is really kind of telling that we need to address that and make it easier for board members to participate. We had great updates from all of our committees, which you guys will be getting today. And really did some great visioning towards moving MAWS forward in a very healthy and expansive way. I'm just thinking, can anyone else who was there, have I missed anything? I think that's kind of the wrap up.
All righty, and then now we will transition to Kristen Eggleston to share with us the financial report.
Hi, thank you. V, you did get my message. Yes, thank you. I had to make some last minute changes, not according to the plan that we were given. I saw this meme going around and I just thought it was great. And so there you go. So in 2022, as has previously been mentioned, we hired an executive director, and we stayed in the black and we paid our bills. So that is the status of our finances, which is sometimes just feels like we're eking by and getting in under the wire, and that is fantastic. And we now have a new treasurer. Go ahead, B. So I do want to mention again, I love you, V, and I'm so glad that you're here and you're bringing in, V's bringing in a lot of other like ability and thought diversity. And I think also just energy diversity that many of us longstanding midwives might not have at all of our disposal. So it's wonderful. Conference has, that's the other people I want to call out or shout out, I guess, not call out. They've just done great, like consistently doing great. And So we want to say thank you to them. And also I'm going to talk about some of the things that are going to be coming up this next year to support them. And also just yay and thank you to the executive committee. You guys have been fantastic. And it has kind of helped really keep things going along. I think that there's been in general with MAWS, but certainly recently, most recent, or at least recently also, just a really high level of functioning and abilities. And so even when we're not sure we did a good job, we kind of actually did pretty good. It's getting us over the wire. So next V. So just in short, we are looking forward to this infusion of ideas and expertise and energy that we will hopefully be having coming in. Then overall, we're moderately stable. So I feel like that is about what I can say. We have had the great webinars with, they're going to probably talk about this too, just more people outside of Washington, and then consistent membership. Those are the two main things. V has done also a great job for sustainability and growth and helping take some of the pressure off of the rest of us. And, you know, but we do need new grants and funding opportunities. And like they said, with the 501c3, potentially, and like all the work around that, there's going to be a lot of work around that. And that will be new for, I think, everyone. So we will be talking more about that. Main income really remains about 50-50 membership and conference. And then there's a small category of about 5% that is just other donations and such. And then this is just our main expenses. And that's pretty self-explanatory, I think. And there we are. And those pretty much are holding steady. Go ahead, thanks, B. So this is what's coming up. We have Susan, I'm super excited, is joining us, and we'll be doing orientation and training. I updated her or the orientation manual for the treasurer portion. Then I'll help her work along into soliciting board of director and committee needs. You know, what are your plans for 2023, and get 2023's budget passed by the end of January 2023, which will be great for the year. And I think that I also forgot to say that we're kind of revamping some of this. There's some stuff with our accountant that we're getting reorganized. And so that will be a really good foot, and Susan will be in on that. We do want to seek this outside funding. And with the 501c3, that's where we think we can get more of these external funds. It would probably be helpful that grants take a larger role in our budget, and so that we're not relying just on our two main tracks, and that will help make us just more stable. And then this kind of is a membership thing, but really the more that conference keeps doing its great stuff, and the more that we just are, you know, solid, and this 501c3, I think we will be able to get more people from nearby and across the country. So does anyone have any questions? Perfect.
Hey, Kristen, before you move on, I just want to reiterate that a lot of the conversation we had at the retreat, like Louisa was talking about, and that has been happening in our community in recent years, is largely financial. And we know that. We know that it's really expensive to become a midwife. We know that it's really financially unsustainable to remain a midwife for a lot of folks. We know that reimbursement needs to be addressed, or different solutions need to be developed with regard to how midwives are paid to be able to sustainably stay in practice. We know that boards are not equitable when people are volunteering over all of their free time, right? It really centers the people that have the ability and privilege to work for free, sometimes 30 hours a week, right? And that is not how we end up with a more diverse and equitable board. So we know money is a huge factor in our community. It's a factor to barriers to entry. It's a factor to maintaining practice, and it's a factor to board membership and service. So it is not lost on us that that is all tied into this conversation, both how we're supporting students through the education process, how we are making the practice more sustainable in terms of reimbursement, and how we make being on the board a paid position eventually, right? We've started to try and move that direction with at least incentivizing. So board members are now getting free memberships during their terms of service, which has not been the case. Students are receiving stipends in recognition of the fact that we don't want to take free student labor, and it's still not quite enough. So we are going to have to make some financial shifts in the future here in order to achieve some of those goals of MAWS as a board and organization staying sustainable and moving forward. But I say that just in recognition that we know it's a larger systemic problem. We know that it's not just membership needs to give us more money, but that it's tied to things like reimbursement and practice and student loans and cost of becoming a midwife and all of that. So it's a systemic picture that we talked at length about at the board retreat, and I think have some creative solutions in development, and looking forward to community support and trying to bring those to fruition.
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that all up. Some of that feels like it belongs in some of the committee presentations, and so I wasn't sure how much I should bring up into this. I will say that the things around reimbursement for midwives and birth centers and care and all of that, that will, I think MAWS in general will continue working on that. And of course, the more the midwives, the more the benefits, all of that, the better it becomes, right? And so that's sort of it just comes on through. Things like MAWS needing to have more outreach or different outreach, or widening our membership base between both professional midwives with, so under the QMP sort of needs, and membership for friends of MAWS or other supporting professionals and things like that. That is something that we should be looking into and moving forward. So that will also help in that way. I feel like the best in stability as far as income goes will be around the external funding, the grants that we may be able to get.
All righty. Thank you, Kristen. And thank you so much for all the work that you've done and all the help you've given me, the support you've given me since you've been on here.
I've wanted you for at least 10 years, so I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you.
If anyone's been on board meetings with me, they're gonna know. Yeah, an executive director.
Well, I hope that I can live up to your expectations, even if you're not on the board anymore. I still have a lot to learn and want to learn. So
happy to help
you for your guidance so far.
Thank you.
Okay, and now we will go to Ledge Ball Committee. I believe Kristen Efland will be presenting.
Hello there, everyone. Can you hear me from over the mountains? Yeah, good. Sometimes our broadband is less broad than yours. So our committee hasn't changed really a lot, although we always do have new folks kind of joining in and adding to our team. But we're still here to promote midwifery, perinatal health, and health equity in Washington State, and also kind of plugging in where we can, supporting national efforts as well. Next slide, please. you know, as you already know, right, we're here to influence policy change. And I looked up, I spoke this year at the American Association for Birth Centers conferences. They asked us to because of our legislation success. And I had to look up, when did we start Midwife Lobby Day? And so the 80s is the answer, right? Decades. So pretty cool. And just trying to plug in all of the places that make sense to be thinking, to have midwives at the table, right, with regard to health policy. Next slide, please. So our policy accomplishments, you had a little preview, and most, if not all of you already know, but really, as Jen said, you know, as far as we know, first in the nation. So just before us, Maine, you know, got access to be able to put in IUDs, but not the word prescribe, right? So as far as we know, we're the first in the United States and our territories and jurisdictions to be able to have direct entry midwives who are community, you know, focused. So, you know, not CMs, but CPMs, licensed midwives, able to prescribe. So really wanting to be able to take care of our clients, give that continuity of care, right? If someone gets that mastitis infection, not wanting to have to send them to the ER, right? Wanting them to be able to get what they need when they leave their visit at 6 weeks postpartum if they desire family planning, right? So we did it. We did it in one short session, and it was amazing and awesome. And yeah, so next slide. Just a little background of the original goal with our bill was to really try to follow that New Zealand model where they just get to, prescribe medications and therapies, for common conditions. Unfortunately, in the compromise process to actually get our bill passed, they sort of forced us to add some categories, which is not the end of the world. It was our fallback if we had to. But then we did get that support from the Washington State Medical Association. And we still have language in there, you'll see, where we can still update it through rules, which makes it easier than having to go back to the statute, right? Back to our elected officials to make changes. Unfortunately, though, the way legislation moves, if any of you remember us emailing you at 10 p.m., like, we've got to save it, our bill's gonna die. It's really kind of fast moving. We tried to get the best, most comprehensive list we could imagine. We realized later, of course, it's not perfect, but it's pretty darn good. Next slide. So you can see here, and I think these slides will be available, so that's why I included a lot of words, but basically right kind of in the middle here, you can see the categories that are included in statute: antibiotic, antiemetic, right? Antiviral, antifungal, those low potency topical steroids, antipyretic medications, right? These are the things that anyone who applies for the license extension and gets it will be able to prescribe, right? As well as hormonal and non-hormonal family planning methods, right? So as you all know, there will be additional training required to be able to get this license extension, but that extension can be applied for right when you graduate as well, if you happen to have already what you need to be able to apply for it. And the rest of us can apply as well who are already practicing and have a license. Next slide. So we are in that rulemaking process now. Everyone wishes it could happen overnight. Unfortunately, as we mentioned before, it's probably about a year in total minimum from when we passed the bill. But there is a MAC meeting coming up soon, maybe next week, where you can get involved in that rulemaking. So that Midwifery Advisory Committee meeting, and as well, there will be more public rulemaking, but really also we hope that you'll engage with us, and we can be advocating as well as we're working through this process. We know already we definitely are wanting to add galactagogues. That was an oversight, as well as topical analgesia for anal, vulvar, perineal pain. And then through conversations with you all, mostly on social media, we've added as well some other categories that we want to add in rules, such as preterm labor preventatives, meaning so someone could get baby aspirin right if they need it, kind of thing, or that progesterone right if they're a candidate, etc. So, and any additional vitamins and minerals to prevent, deficiencies, those kind of things. So we already have the prenatal vitamins, right? But something like vitamin D, etc. So I'm sure there's a few more we're forgetting here. Be in touch with us about your thoughts. It is an ongoing process. So next slide, please. Just a little quick more behind the story. So we did get that support from ARNPs United and the Washington State Medical Association, which was great. Unfortunately, we had tons of bipartisan support at first, which is awesome. That's the cool thing about midwifery, I always think. Unfortunately, kind of at the 10th hour, there were some folks from the Republican caucus who wanted to add, to try to make it about abortion, even though it wasn't about abortion. And so, it was said to us, and we're like, well, it's already not in our scope. Like, why are we even talking about this, right? Like, abortion's not in our scope. Because that language wasn't added in there, because then we couldn't have the support of the Democratic caucus, which is where our bill was coming out of initially, from the Democrat side was our sponsor. We did lose a lot of the Republican support, but we were still able to pass anyway. So we're still really proud of that effort. And it was unfortunate. We actually had Republicans who were, our elected officials who really support us, who were saying, I'm so sad, I can't support this because my caucus is no longer, being willing. So we were disappointed, but we are happy that it passed. Yeah, we were able to save our gender inclusive language, which is cool because the doulas were not able to save their gender inclusive language. But it turns out individuals, it's really actually dangerous precedent to assume that women aren't individuals. So we were able to keep that in there. So next slide. And then, we got a lot, basically all the bills we were supporting, I think pretty much got through, which is amazing. As Jen mentioned, keeping that licensing fee cap so we all can pay less than $600 instead of $2,000 or $3,000 a year. And then these other bills, right? That insurance coverage for human breast milk, which is amazing, or human milk. Another thing that's going to really apply to us even more, right? If we want to be able to do immediate postpartum contraception, right? Being able to do that rather than having to wait 6 weeks to be able to get insurance to pay for it. We supported the doulas in their work for access to reimbursement, and hopefully they'll get really good reimbursement as they now have in Oregon and as they're trying to achieve in other places as well. And then a monthly diaper subsidy. So if you have anyone on TANF, they now get that because of, a bill that we didn't run, but that we were supportive of. Next slide. This is just a reminder that we did put out these 2 articles as a way to be preparing for our bill. And they're actually really great resources if you have any questions about what's going on in other jurisdictions, especially the Journal of Midwifery and Women's Health article, which I can give you. If someone knows my email, you can put it in the chat or I'll put it in later. I'm happy to email you a copy if you don't have access. And then the other on the bottom here is a free access, open access journal article. Next slide. As well, just a shout out to our former students who are now midwives, colleagues, right? So happy. Keep up the good work, students, with your master's projects, really supporting all this good work we want to do in the midwifery profession. Jen Segadelli back in the day, and Britt Zell just recently. And yeah, right, this takes years and decades of planning and doing. So we're so excited. Thank you everyone who made this possible. Next slide. Just looking ahead, right? What are we going to do this next year? So really that pay equity for midwives is what we're wanting, much like Jen was talking about. How do we get fair reimbursement? How do we get paid for these things we aren't getting paid for, right? Birth assistance, labor management, birth supplies, right? So we're collaborating with the HCA, with the maternity bundle, working towards additional fair pay efforts and increased reimbursement. And then unfortunately, as we do every year, although maybe not in the future, for now, we have to just keep doing this budget proviso to keep your licensing fees and our licensing fees reasonable. So it's annoying to have to go every year, but there we go. We'll have to do that again this year and we'll do it because it's important. Next slide. And then Deborah, do you want to just talk for a few minutes about birth center stuff? And then I'll just wrap us up for a minute at the end.
Certainly. I'm Deborah, and I've been working on the Ledge Paul Committee for quite some time. And I've been taking on kind of what we call the VBAC portion of this. But really, this is about changing the birth center regulations to update them and make them more feasible, and to remove some of the boundaries that we have that are causing problems with new birth centers being able to open. So both MAWS and WARM submitted petitions recently to the Washington State to update those birth center regulations. And because of this, we've been having multiple meetings throughout this whole year. These are 3-hour meetings with the Department of Health and all interested parties. And we have been walking through the rules piece by piece to see what pieces we need to update. The big problem with this is after we've walked through this ourselves, then we have to have some public meetings, and those public meetings can include anybody who wants to attend. And then those people can make suggestions as well. And then the Department of Health makes the final say on what changes actually get to be made. So while we're trying to remove concerns of ours, other concerns could be put in and actually restrict some of our care and the types of things that we're trying to do. So we got to be careful. The next slide here, we'll talk a little bit more specifically about some of the things that we have been working on. So one of those is updating all of the gendered language in there. And then one of the pieces that when the birth center regulations were first made, they really blended both birth center care and midwifery care together. Many birth centers were owned by an in-house midwifery group, but that is not always the case. So we're trying to pull these pieces apart. So if you are purely a birth center owner, these are what your responsibilities are versus being a midwife. And some of the examples of this are the birth center is not responsible for newborn screenings, for ROGAM, for prenatal screenings, for a lot of the stuff that's done outside of that time that you are admitted to the birth center. So there's lots of places we're trying to pull those pieces out. We're also trying to make it easier to do inspections. And if you want to do the Department of Health Washington inspection process, that's great. But if you are also doing CABC, which is the Commission for the Accreditation of Birth Centers processing, then maybe you don't have to do both of those. So we're trying to allow for the option of doing one or the other, but not requiring either one in particular. Also, some quick pickup, some adjustments for things like HIV testing language, which we aren't doing right now, cleaning up some stuff around paper charting. And then the real big ones here are removing the restriction to disallow people who have had prior uterine surgery. This would allow us to put VBACs in the birth centers. There's also a suggestion, which isn't on our bullet list here, about trying to remove the restriction for multiples or breaches. And so because both of the large professional organizations in Washington have submitted petitions requesting changes, everybody has their say in making suggestions. The Department of Health will be the final one. Right now, what we're hearing is that the people that we're talking to seem very supportive of almost all of these changes, but we won't know until the end which ones they're really going to go for. And I feel like the VBAC multiples twins are kind of 3 of the really big things that we're looking at. We're also looking at changing things like room size restrictions. When this was first made over 20 years ago, it was required to have a very large first birth suite, and then you could have a smaller secondary suite. But we're looking at what hospitals are using and saying, well, if a hospital room can be this size, we do not need to have very, very large suites for us. So we're looking at trying to kind of update that and make that in alignment with what some of the hospital centers are doing. And then the last bullet here about the B occupancy is what one of our Ledge Paul committee members always speaks about. And it's a great way of thinking about this, that we are a maxi house as a birth center, not a mini hospital. So remembering the things that you do in a house, not the things that you do in a hospital. So as we're going through this, we're trying to be really careful about looking at all of those different pieces. And then the last bullet point on here is looking at some of the expensive equipment that is currently required in a birth center that may not be required for a home birth practice. And why is that the case? And one of those is the neonatal glucometer, which is $400 to $600 to buy new, and the strips are pretty expensive too. So the discussion we're having is this a requirement or just a recommendation? Because we would like more birth centers to open in the state. So those are the big pieces that we're working on. We're having meetings throughout this year. It will then become, we'll start making some public meetings, and we have to announce those in advance, have people come to be able to make their comments, and then the Department of Health will make final recommendations. We don't expect these changes to be happening until mid to late next year, would be my guess. And in the meantime, the LegPol committee is also working on trying to update our VBAC guideline recommendations. And I say this, but really we're talking about our LAC guideline. So laboring after cesarean, what are the things to be thinking about? What are the best practices? What types of informed consent should you be thinking about? How should this be changing your practice? So we are currently, as a committee, also working on having meetings around that and getting that updated, kind of like our transfer document. Next slide, please.
And go ahead and click that again, please. I won't spend a lot of time on this other than to say, join us if these kind of things are your thing, right? We meet weekly usually, sometimes a little bit slower through the summer, but we just have big visions and dreams, always working to make the profession better for all of us. And this reminds me that I got a call from someone, a midwife in New Mexico. She used to practice in Oregon. She wanted to ask me about adding TXA, right, tranexamic acid, which is now in our drug legend, to theirs. And she says, I read your article in the Journal of Midwifery and Women's Health, and I realized that we have the power as the New Mexico Association of Midwives to change our formulary. She didn't even know that. She's like, I don't think anyone even knows that. So like, that's like part of what we're doing here is like just putting all this out there to just make midwifery better, even like in other places where they maybe want access to something for families that they don't currently have access to. So really cool. We hopefully will have another new article coming out in the next year as well. Britt will be the lead on that, kind of telling people, you know, about our success. Next slide. And biggest, most important thing, save the date for Lobby Day this year. We are going to have an in-person presence. We are also committed to making sure you can show up as well, you know, whether it's like people carrying iPads into the in-person meetings to make sure those of you who can't make it in person can still come, but really try to come in person. It's actually really cool to be together. So it's Thursday, March 16th this year, later than it's ever been. But that means it's not, you know, right around Valentine's Day this year, for those of you who care about that. We hope you'll be there. Look for the links to register, and please register even if you aren't 100% sure you can come, because then we can schedule meetings for you and go from there. We know midwife life, right? But we will want you to register if there's any chance of you trying to come. So be there. And then last slide, please. I think maybe there's two, but I won't spend time on them. Yeah, just keep your eyes out. We hope to see you for Lobby Day, and maybe just one more slide, maybe, which I think is just maybe our image. Oh, so much thanks to everyone who's amazing. And there's a few people not featured here who didn't get their pictures on there, but we really, including, I'm not sure, Sheila, if you're an official part of our committee, but I'm so happy that you were there today, and I hope we get to keep seeing you. So really exciting. You know, Siri Larson is now a new chair because Jen has been an amazing chair, co-chair and chair of this committee. So we're just so happy for Siri, who didn't want to talk today, but so happy for you and for everyone doing so much. Deborah, Cynthia, Anna, who did so much last year, Lynette, and our new blood, Julie, and then of course our lobbyist, Amber. So thank you so much. Email me about anything. And then I think our last slide is just, that's it. There were image credits. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Kristen. All righty, membership committee is up next.
V, am I presenting membership?
Yes.
Cool. Okay, just a second.
Oh, wait, I think I did this for you, right, V? I think it's me.
Okay.
I think it's you too, Kristen.
Okay,
You
sorry.
can tell the executive committee is on our last legs.
Okay, phew.
Oh, you, Kristen. I'll help as needed.
Yes, oh no, it is me.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, it's just because I used to be membership committee. And anyways, so here is a short little snapshot of our current membership. The total is just people who have signed up in that category previously, but this year have not been active. So there you are. So what does membership provide? There are both for the professional midwives and then also for the friends and students. But honestly, we've been going strong for 30 years, which is amazing. And like Kristen just said, all this really great stuff that we have been able to achieve. We have our professional peer and incident review for the professional midwives and their students. We just did one the other day. It worked real slick. It was great. And this is the core of this, and our legislative actions are the core of what MAWS has always done and what our core mission is. Because I just want to reiterate the importance of us having our own QMP process that maintains us reviewing us, instead of having doctors and all sorts of people who don't even know what the heck is going on reviewing us. So this is just an essential basic part of membership. We also provide these amazing clinical guidelines. There's a lot of variation in people's practices, and the guidelines do not remove the ability to have variation in practice, but it really does provide a midwife and home birth based view on clinical guidelines. I just mentioned a minute ago about the expansion of our scope and different opportunities that are available around the state with our conferences and all of that. And also we get represented, and we have a strong history of being represented in local and state areas. All right, next. So what happened for membership in 2022? I already just talked about us being about 50% of our operating budget. And then really this past year, V and Jessica, the outgoing vice president, have been the ones really managing membership. So we kept up the database. And I just want to remind everyone too, that if you yourself are not viewable on the list of members that is on the MAWS website, that is, you get to go into your own profile, update your information with what is current, how you want to be seen. That is you managing your profile. And so if you have questions, let V know. And also they get a lot of emails and inquiries about membership or just trying to find certain members. So next, so I guess I just talked about this. What should we do in 2023? Check your profile, make sure you're accurate, and also read the emails from MAWS. We have a lot of people who say, well, MAWS never does this, MAWS never tells us this, MAWS this, MAWS that. Well, actually, there is at least one and usually two and sometimes 3 emails per month going out to members. Now, if you want to get a member email, you do have to be a member. And then you do have to read the email. You do have to check your spam folder. So do that. So that's what members need to do. The new board of directors is going to be setting the goals for 2023, which may include some of these longstanding goals, which are about outreaching to current or lapsed MAWS members, talking to midwifery schools or students to help encourage the growth of midwifery in Washington, or maybe even like places like New Mexico. And we want to have a wider base of both of support but also of knowledge. You know, the more that people know what we are doing and what is available, the more we just go out and about. So what's next?
That was it.
Okay.
Then.
Does anybody have any questions about membership? or?
Kristen, before you close out
Mhm.
membership, can I just add something?
Yeah,
We recognize that there are a lot of places you could put your money in terms of membership for professional associations in Washington State. One of the things that we want to highlight in terms of membership benefit is the fact that with such a robust QMP process, I mean, there's several membership benefits, but with such a robust QMP process, and I don't know if folks actually know this, so I want to say it out loud. If there is an incident in which there is a complaint made against you, if you are a MAWS member, that can be reviewed by our QMP. It can go through an internal process here, and that is not to say that it doesn't need a referral to the DOH if there was significant negligence, but there is this stopgap for peer and incident review by fellow midwives of a complaint made against you. We cannot do that for people who are not MAWS members. And in recent months, we have gotten some complaints, and people wanting to know where to direct them. And if they are
from people
not a
against
MAWS
people
member,
who are not MAWS members, yeah.
right. And when they are not a MAWS member, and maybe they're not a member of any professional association, the only place to direct them is to the Department of Health. And that is significant for that individual midwife, and it's significant for us as a profession because we foot the bill for Department of Health investigations. That's part of what our licensing fees pay for, right? Is maintaining that midwifery program, including investigations. So the robust QMP process, the continuing education offerings, the paid lobbyist are all significant member benefits. And I just am not sure people know that MAWS has this kind of self-regulatory feature for people who are members here that can act as a bit of a protective peer mechanism, as opposed to the only recourse being a report to the Department of Health. And that's been really hard for us when we have gotten complaints and they are not MAWS members and we don't have any way to, for lack of a better word, protect that person or step in on their behalf in terms of a peer review of an incident that occurred. Yeah,
Thank you for bringing that up, Jen. I just want to reiterate the fact that this is kind of like a group of three, like what membership does, what QMP does, and what LegPol does, again, is the core. And for people who are on here who haven't heard this before, Washington has a law that says these professional memberships must pay out of their own licensing fees for the oversight and investigation of those professionals. So the MDs, they have a, I don't know, $200 licensing fee because there are so many MDs to pay for their oversight. Midwives would have a $2,000 or $3,000 per year licensing fee instead of our $525 fee if it really were not for MAWS. In and of itself, the fact that I pay $525, not $1,500 or $2,500 is if there were nothing else, that is the reason I'm a member of MAWS. And it does it because then, like Jen said, we can have the reviews and the incident reviews through our own process, which is better all around. So people, it is just such an integral, massive, and important function for what we do as LMs in Washington that people really need to understand that. Thank you. Any other questions?
I just actually wanted to quickly jump in, and maybe we can do this after the break, V. That segues really nicely into the update that I have from the JUA. So if it's cool, why don't we take that 5-minute break. And when we come back, I'll throw my JUA 5 cents on top of it.
Sounds beautiful.
Awesome.
I'll speak for V.
Okay, let's take a quick 5-minute break. We still have several committees to get through and a smooth transitions presentation. So we will see you in about 5 minutes, 11:05.
All right, folks. We'll just give everyone a couple minutes to, or not even a couple minutes, 30 seconds to get back from their bio breaks or grabbing another cup of coffee. God knows I need an extra one. I wanted to give people a quick update about the JUA. I know that it's hard for me to know, V, if people are still here. I know I've got a few people. All right. So we've had a lot of phone calls, emails, social media chatter about the advertised 10% premium rate hike from the JUA, which understandably makes anyone in private practice in the state quietly flip out. I wanted to give, so this dovetails into Kristen's membership chat about the fact that the work that we do in MAWS actually benefits many, like all of the midwives in Washington state. And similarly, what we're seeing with the JUA rate hike, honestly, is a direct consequence of claims. So the background to this 10% rate hike is that in 2021, the JUA claims and payouts went up 400%. So that basically means that there have been several million-dollar settlements in cases against malpractice cases against midwives in Washington. Further, there are several more in the pipeline. It costs hundreds of thousands of dollars to administrate a claim, a civil claim against a midwife for malpractice. And so the JUA, which actually isn't a profit-making endeavor, has to maintain enough revenue to be able to continue to defend midwives and to continue to extend liability coverage. If the JUA was actually trying to make up the shortfall between premiums gathered and costs to the association for defending claims and settling cases, you'd be looking at a 45% rate hike. So that's obviously massive. It's not something that anyone can sustain. The JUA is aware of how hard this is for midwives. They're trying so hard to help us maintain coverage at a place where it's manageable. I know it doesn't feel like that, but they really are. As an insurer of last resort, which means they're actually required by law to extend malpractice coverage to any midwife in Washington if they have a license. That's the only criteria. Unlike Southern Cross and other, I don't know if there are any others in the marketplace right now, who actually underwrite, which means they evaluate clients based on their risk, based on the sorts of births that they do, if they've had any claims or judgments against them, you know, those things increase your rates. JUA doesn't do that. So know that the JUA is working really hard to take care of the midwives who are being sued, many of whom are not, well, we don't know that. They insure anyone in Washington with a license, whether or not they're a MAWS member. So you're in the same way that the Department of Health uses your licensing fees to investigate claims against a midwife who might not be a MAWS member. The JUA insures people who may or may not be as well. So they're pouring all of their efforts into liability reduction strategies. So they're doing practice risk management consultations. They are really trying to help midwives in the same way that the QMP does, to reduce the risk profile of the clients they take care of, so that they're minimizing the likelihood of a suit and a subsequent settlement or claims journey. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. I had thought about asking the JUA to potentially hold off on that rate hike for 12 months while we pursue increased reimbursement. But realistically, based on the information that I have from our midwife chair of the JUA, Christine Tyndall, and from my years sitting on the board of the JUA, that's not realistic. If the JUA continues paying out claims the way they are having to right now, we're looking, we're looking at having to ask the legislature to direct the big insurance payers in the association to contribute more money into the pot. That's a really big, fat, hairy deal. So unfortunately, in order to continue, we're just going to have to cope with the rate hike. And it's another reason for all of us to try really, really hard to mitigate whatever risk you can in your practice to try and avoid suits. If we can do that as a community, we're going to be able to hold our insurance rates where they are. It's an unfortunate reality of practice. That's what I got for the JUA.
All righty. Thank you, Lisa. And sorry if our slight schedule change has impacted anyone, but now we are going to move to, sorry.
Yes, yeah, I like those, but they're.
Okay, data and research.
V, do you have my slides, sweetie?
Oh, are you not able to see this?
I have, I still have, mine still says JUA.
Mine as well, B.
Oh, okay. One moment, please. Okay, what about now?
That's great. And then if you could just, I mean, you can just use it in this view, I guess, or you can expand it.
Yes, one second.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you. Hi, everybody. So I know most of the people on this call, but not everybody. I'm Audrey Levine. I'm a retired licensed midwife, and I am the chair of the MAWS Data and Research Committee. Whoops, V, can you go to the next slide? Thanks. And so I wanted folks to know who is on our Data and Research Committee. It's a really robust and wonderful group of committed people. So this is everybody who's on it. I did snag 2 of the new MAWS board members to join the committee, and we're super excited to have both Susan Hoffey and Sheila McMary in our group. Next slide, please. So what I'm going to talk about is the project that has been occupying all of the time and effort of the MAWS Data and Research Committee pretty much for the past few years. So So as most of you, if not all of you know, MAWS was invited to participate in the pilot phase of OB COPE at the Foundation for Healthcare Quality back in 2010. And at that point, about 70% of MAWS members voluntarily submitted their data alongside the hospital data. And that was amazing. And it only lasted for about a year because cost basically was prohibitive for us to be involved. And then members of the MAWS Data and Research Committee actually raised the funds to be able to get MAWS members back into OB COPE when participation in data collection became mandatory for licensed midwives in the state. And so since 2015, really the end of 2014, MAWS has been continuously in OB COPE. And what we were able to do was to create what we called a data ferry, exporting data from Manastats into OB COPE so that the midwives wouldn't have to do two separate sets of data. And then I think, again, most of you probably know about the really wonderful landmark study that came out last November, that looked at over 10,000 births in the OB COPE database that were all community-based births. Elizabeth Nethery was the lead author on that study, and several members of our Data and Research Committee were on it as well. It was published in the Green Journal, the major obstetric journal in the US, which was really unprecedented. And to have a group of midwives and OBs co-authoring this paper was really an exceptional thing. So there were two basic takeaways from that study. One was that outcomes for home births and birth centers, freestanding birth centers, were no different. And that was a big deal because ACOG has long sort of maintained that, you know, births in freestanding birth centers, accredited freestanding birth centers, you know, that makes sense, but home birth is crazy. And so to be able to demonstrate that there actually isn't any difference, as we all know, between outcomes at home and outcomes in freestanding birth centers was really quite groundbreaking. And then the other thing was that it demonstrated that in a state like Washington, where midwives are more integrated into the healthcare system and where we have ready access to consultation and transfer of care, thanks to programs like Smooth Transitions and longstanding relationships that midwives have built with the obstetric community here, the outcomes here look like outcomes in countries like the Netherlands and the UK and Canada. And that's a big deal because detractors of home birth in Washington state have long said, well, you can't extrapolate from those studies in places like Canada and the UK and the Netherlands because midwives aren't well integrated in the US. And so our answer to that was, well, so integrate them and then look at what the data shows. And this is what the data shows. So it was a very, very powerful study. So back in 2018, when the Division of Research at MANA announced that they were going to be leaving MANA, our Data and Research Committee started looking at alternatives to Manastats because of the requirement that we participate in data collection for relicensure. Next slide, V. And so we explored different options. We looked at the PDR for AABC, and there were both cost issues and issues of security of the data and issues of administrative capacity, just because if MAWS members started putting their data into the PDR, it would essentially double the size of contributors to the PDR right now. So it would be a huge burden on their administration. So we ended up deciding to go with building a data repository at the Foundation for Healthcare Quality. One of the big advantages of that, of course, is that we would continue to have data alongside, community-based birth data alongside hospital data. And there really isn't anything else like that in the entire United States. So given that longstanding relationship that we have with the Foundation for Healthcare Quality, this just made the most sense. So it's been a long process. We have finally entered a beta testing phase. So we're really excited about that. I'll say more about that in a second. But basically, all of the data points in the Community Birth Data Registry, or the CBDR, they align with the data points in OB-COPE, so we will be able to make direct comparisons both across birth settings and provider types. We have additional data points in the CBDR that are not in OB-COPE, so that we'll be able to capture what is unique and relevant about midwifery care and community-based midwifery care. Submitting data to the CBDR will fulfill the licensure renewal requirement. We've already been in touch with Kathy Weed at the Department of Health, and it's just a matter of basically getting them to approve the CBDR once it goes live. But just an FYI for folks who are thinking that they would rather stick with MANA, there really is a question about whether MANA will be able to continue to be a DOH approved repository, because the requirement is that the data go to a research organization, and right now MANA does not have that capacity. They have no division of research, and so it remains to be seen whether MANA will continue to be a viable option for midwives in Washington. So I want to reiterate that the data will only be used for quality improvement and research. We were very specific when we created that mandate for midwives to do data collection, that the data would not go to our regulatory authority, that the data goes to an organization like the Foundation for Healthcare Quality, and it is used just for quality improvement and for research. Thanks to a really generous 3-year grant that we were able to secure from the Yellow Chair Foundation, participation in the CBDR will be free for all licensed Washington State midwives. So not just MAWS members, but everybody. And our hope is that after 3 years, we will either be able to get Yellow Chair to continue to fund this, or that the Washington State Healthcare Authority will realize the value of this data, both in terms of outcomes and cost savings, particularly for vulnerable Medicaid populations. And so we're hoping that possibly the HCA would take over paying for midwives to participate, because of course, hospitals that participate in OB-COPE don't have to, individual practitioners don't have to pay to do data collection. That's all covered by hospitals, and for midwives, it's not okay for us to be required to do data collection and then ask us to pay to do it. So, and then lastly, midwives will receive individual reports on your own data, as well as de-identified aggregated reports. So you'll be able to do benchmarking of your data against the larger group. Next slide, please. So as I said, the beta testing phase is almost complete. We've gotten really robust feedback from the beta testers, and it has pushed off the launch a little bit. We had hoped to launch by January. So now it's looking more like the repository will go live in March. We will have several orientation sessions, both live and recorded, and we will be putting together a user manual. And then we're very excited about the fact that Bruce Ackerman, who was the former manager of Manastats and was involved with Manastats for 2 decades, more than 2 decades, is going to be working basically to support the midwives in getting into the database, answering questions as issues come up, kind of coordinating similarly to what they did in the past, where they would contact midwives if they fell behind, and be able to, kind of nudge them along and answer any questions that they might have. So that is my report. I'm going to look in the chat because I did see a question pop up.
I think you answered it though, Audrey.
Okay. Okay.
Thank
Just
you,
need to be
Audrey.
patient. Yeah. You're very welcome. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Audrey.
One moment, please. Okay, so up next will be QMP, and let me just pull that slide up.
If I remembered what was on my first slide, I could start, but I don't.
Sorry, having some technical difficulties.
Sorry, I could possibly, if I can share my screen, I could maybe pull them up. Would that be helpful?
Yeah, if you're, hold on.
I just would need a minute. Let me get there. Yeah.
Okay. Never.
No. Okay.
Is everyone able to see this? Okay.
It says you've started screen sharing, but nothing is coming up on your actual screen.
Shoot, okay.
Hold on, I got it. Oh, there you go, B.
Okay, well, you can go to the next slide right away. Thank you, V. So I wanted to be transparent about who's sitting on the QMP and who's receiving these reports when you send them in. So this is our panel. Deborah is currently covering for Maya on, Maya is out with her after the birth of her first child, who is freaking adorable. But I'm pretty convinced that we're never gonna let Deborah go because she's amazing and has a lot of energy. So I'm hoping that she'll stay. I also meant to include in this slide and unfortunately omitted a big, huge thank you to Winnie McNamara, who has stepped down. She's doing more expert witness work in support of midwives. And if there is ever a case that you're involved in and it goes to court, Winnie is the person you want in your corner, but she will be much missed. She's been serving the QMP for about 15 years. So huge thanks to Winnie. We miss her presence. Next slide, please. One change that's coming up for you is that you will be able to file your incident reports online without printing and uploading. So we're trying very hard to remove paper and remove that barrier that we all know can just postpone the process. So things like printing out confidentiality statements and signing them and uploading them will soon, hopefully, fingers crossed, be online. And as soon as we get the link up, which I'm hoping, V, you can help with to get it up on the website, and you'll be able to submit online and it will be super easy and it will take 5 to 10 minutes. And for now, just email me or Louisa at qmp@washingtonmidwives.org if you would like the link, and we will send it to you. But it will be on the website soon, and we're planning a bit of a website overhaul to make it more user-friendly. The other thing we're working on is just the archive piece and just maintaining everything in a more organized fashion. Tech is not my strong suit, so I am leaning heavily on others for that, but it's important. All right. Next slide. Here's the cases. As you all know, NICU admissions can range from cooling therapy to severely compromised babies to a couple days of, CPAP or supplemental O2. So that's a wide range of how much of a near miss that actually was in that category of neonatal morbidity and NICU admits. Birth giver or maternal morbidity, that's a bit more serious. Those, if someone's going in for shock or ICU admit, they have a long road of recovery ahead. So there's been 3 of those reported to MAWS. 4 cases of neonatal mortality, ranging from unexplained stillbirth to interpartum death. 0 birth giver mortality. And there was 1 case that involved both maternal morbidity and neonatal mortality. So those are the cases for the year. We have also received 4 complaints meeting criteria from non-MAWS members. So that relates to things others have been saying where, we get these reports mostly from hospital staff or physicians. We've had 0 complaints received in this calendar year for MAWS members. When we receive those complaints from hospitals, we have no way of knowing what the actual story was. So some of them sound egregious. They may have been egregious, but that's just one side of the story. And the only recourse that we have is to refer them to WARM or the DOH. So yeah, next slide. With the upheaval of the board and what's been going on, we've been in staunch support of those processes, but we as the QMP have decided to stay put and do what we do with stability. And because, as people have mentioned, being reviewed by peers is not only keeps our cases out of the DOH and off of their budget statement, but also allows for us to be reviewed by peers who know what it means to arrange for a transport from out of hospital to hospital. No one else knows that. That is not in the skill set of really any other provider. And there's many, many other things, such as being the only licensed provider in the room. If you have a student or a birth assistant or one or the other, you're the only trained hands. You can't call in a bunch more. And there's no one else out there who can review our cases who really understands what that means. And our feedback has been good this year and has been largely good for the last few years, that these processes are kind and respectful and also super educational. And the Zoom reviews have been going really smoothly. And I've said this for the last 2 years, but why the heck haven't we been doing this all along? Because it just removes so many barriers and hours of travel and parking in the city and all of that. So Zoom for the win. And I believe that's all I've got. We are humming along. Louisa, do you have anything to add? Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
The one thing I have to add is that we are truly welcoming and looking for new members. We really want new folks, especially if you are from somewhere other than the I-5 corridor, like Eastern Washington. We could really use your voice. We want geographical diversity, as well as all the other kinds of representation as well. That's super important. But we welcome you, or especially if you're a newer midwife who'd like to join the QMP, that's super valuable too. So email us at qmp@washingtonmidwives.org if you would like to join. And as always, my kid, Beetle Dixon, is responsible for the slides being legible at all. So thanks to them. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Mel.
Alrighty, and now we will hear from the conference committee. They are sick and or traveling or teaching, so they're not able to be with us in person, but Sunita Iyer has recorded her presentation, so hopefully the sound will play.
Hi. I'm Sunita Iyer. I am one of the members of the Continuing Education Committee and here to give you a little update on what we worked on in 2022. So some of our key wins this year were ongoing webinars to support your continuing education. The choices for those webinars came from, as many of you already know, from the update from the Legislative Committee and from a number of other outgoing messages from the broadening scope to be able to offer reproductive health care outside of pregnancy, intrapartum, and postpartum. So last year we offered sort of part one, and this year we were able to, with our same really well-loved speakers, be able to offer part two. And also in response to member requests, we were able to offer another webinar specifically on the topic of gestational diabetes management so that people could support their learning in that particular topic, having not had an update on that topic more recently. And finally, our last win or change is that all of us on the Continuing Education Committee are now outgoing as board members and committee members. So all three of us are leaving the organization at this time. Simply really to time out and in the spirit of rotation, be able to hand off what we've been working on this committee, and all those of us also sitting on the board, hand off these topics and sort of the ongoing health of continuing education to newer voices. So I just want to take a moment to thank, me, but primarily my co-committee members, Liz Fay and Lisa Stotts. Elliot Tillman was also part of our team, and with new baby on board and new practice, had to step off as well. So our committee was very small and very mighty. So in terms of what was the fuel behind those webinars and all of the background work that goes into securing speakers, getting continuing education approved, collecting references and CVs, and then putting out all of the promotional materials. It's a pretty tiny team. We also really want to thank V. Mai, who's our executive director, for all of the support that we received in terms of outgoing messaging and marketing and outreach to all of you. So that has made our events really successful, has allowed MAWS honestly to continue to survive and thrive even in the course of the pandemic. So in addition to thanking everybody, I'll just thank all of you for making it interesting as always. And I look forward to what comes next, which is some more continuing education offerings for all of you related to, again, the broadening scope around reproductive health care, and then other topics that come up. So as members, you can suggest things that you want to hear about or you need to learn about in order to keep practicing successfully. The continuing education isn't necessarily just about what's interesting or curious, but really intended to support your safe practice. So these, the topic suggestions it's really important that it comes from the community. A lot of our topics also do get shared with us through the QMP, the Quality Management Program, in terms of what they're seeing in trends. So if there's things that are showing up in terms of events in our community, those are also reasons for us to consider scheduling webinars. We have tended to keep the webinars just a few a year because it seems to be the amount of opportunities that people need to maintain their continuing education credits. But it is certainly also possible, depending on the committee makeup and time and desire of the membership, to offer more. So there is going to be a completely new committee comprised of people from the board and possibly also community members. If you have an interest in being part of continuing education and being part of the process of actually putting on an event or a production or have that experience, this is a really great time to step in and help the organization. Continuing education is in many ways the backbone of how this organization survives. It is the place that we generate the most amount of revenue in addition to membership dues. And it has actually been one of the ways that we've been able to support the creation of a training by Davina Simmons for speakers on equity and integrating that into their talks and being able to bring an executive director into the organization. So having your voices and your support is also really important to the health of this organization. Thanks very much.
All righty, and now we will hear from Smooth Transitions. Let me just pull that up.
Yeah, and I just might start going while you pull that up, if that's okay. I think most of you know me. My name is Melissa Denmark, and I'm the program coordinator for Smooth Transitions. Thank you for inviting me today to give you an update. Smooth Transitions is a quality improvement program based at the Foundation for healthcare quality in Seattle. Most of you know, I think it started in 2009, and its purpose is to enhance the safety of hospital transfers from planned home and birth center births in Washington. And we can go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so first of all, thank you, MAWS, for being for your ongoing support of the program. We have a lot of other groups that support us, in particular, highlighting the Washington State Hospital Association, and some of the other state level groups have really helped to elevate the program and underscore the message that the safety of hospital transfers really needs to be addressed at a systems level. Smooth Transitions is led by an interdisciplinary group that meets quarterly and provides direction to the program. There's representation from obstetricians, nurse midwives, EMS, licensed midwives, WISHA, pediatrics, neonatology, MFM, nursing, the Department of Health. We have a doula, and we are looking for a consumer. So if any of you out there has a client that you think would be interested in quality improvement and working on this, this topic and in this space, please reach out to me. Next slide, please. Okay, so here are our mission and goals. I'm not going to read them all, but I just want to stress that when we talk about shared responsibility, we really mean it. We present to hospitals, and when we do that, we focus on what they can be doing to improve transfers from community-based births, but we're equally committed to engaging midwives in this conversation about best practices. We're really starting to work with EMS providers as well, and I'll talk a little bit about that in my presentation, but there's really work to do on all sides. We did just recently update and expand an item in our first goal, that goal to improve whole person safety, and we wanted to really broaden that to think of safety as something that encompasses emotional, psychological, social, cultural, spiritual, and physical processes and outcomes. So we're kind of taking a more holistic view on safety. Next slide, please. Okay, so here are the basic components of the program, and this is going to be a review for a lot of you all that are participating in Smooth Transitions at your local hospitals. But we begin with an initial presentation to the hospital that's either at the request of the hospital or maybe a local community midwife who believes there's a need for the program. If the hospital decides to participate, we identify clinician champions both in the hospital and within the community midwife community. This is really just a point of contact between the hospital, the community midwives, and myself. And one of our first tasks together is to co-create transfer protocols for the birthing person and newborn. And this is co-created with input from hospital providers and community midwives. We then, or at the same time, form a perinatal transfer committee, which really needs to comprise all parts of the system, both within the hospital and the community midwives. Any community midwife that would transfer to that hospital, what that looks like sometimes is sometimes on border hospitals, that's hospitals from other states, sometimes that's not licensed midwives. So after that, we begin to have regular meetings. They're almost all virtual, although some are getting to move to in person. Typically quarterly, we collect qualitative data through our surveys that capture the experience of everyone involved in transfers. And in case you weren't aware, Smooth Transitions has online survey tools to capture qualitative data, and it's, used this. The surveys are incredibly rich. The data we get from these surveys, we de-identify and review regularly at the perinatal transfer committee meetings. And this is just a really valuable opportunity to provide and receive feedback. We have surveys from receiving providers, nursing, community midwife, the patient, and EMS. So just for those of you who've never attended a perinatal transfer committee meetings, Typical meeting looks like there's space for a hospital update, specifically these days around COVID staffing and capacity. We also see if there are any community midwife updates. For example, if there's a new birth center or maybe birth center changing ownership, that's just an example. But there's always dedicated time to talk about how the transfers are going from both sides, what's working, what's not working. And we review our transfer report that I prepare. But one of the most important aspects of these meetings is relationship building and really getting to know one another outside the context of transfers, which can be stressful. And what I see over time is that once the intrapartum, immediate postpartum, and newborn transfers are working well, this relationship can really evolve into developing additional QI opportunities around perinatal care. And there's a lot of creative problem solving. Examples of this would be midwife to midwife transfer, accessing prenatal ultrasound versions, preterm labor assessments, iron infusion, therapeutic rest, EMR access, early discharge, and just more collaborative care around higher risk patients or clients. And then we're in the process right now of protecting these meetings, so we can actually dig a little bit deeper into these transfer experiences. So next slide, please. I'm trying to move really quickly, you all. I'm sorry if I'm talking really fast, but this is what our survey posters look like. Participating hospitals have them in their nursing stations, break rooms, or whatever it works to just remind nurses and receiving providers to fill out their survey. We also have some of them in freestanding birth centers and midwifery practices. But we have the links to the surveys and a printable survey card on the Smooth Transitions resource page. Please remember to fill out a survey anytime you transfer and encourage your client to do so as well. They receive a $10 e-gift card from Amazon for filling it out. So please remember to do that. It's something I'm always saying at these meetings. And reach out to me if you'd like to have a poster at your place of work. Next slide, please. Uh-oh, are we stuck? Whoa, there we go. Okay, so a few things that we're working on. I mentioned we're in the process of protecting these perinatal transfer committee meetings, but we're also wanting to have the ability to do what's called our external review, or a neutral third-party review process that will be available to Smooth Transition member hospitals and the community midwives who transfer there if they want to supplement their own perinatal quality assurance program. So in addition to what MAWS offers, this would be something, it would include a multidisciplinary review team, members of the Smooth Transitions leadership team, or participating hospitals and midwives. There would be a review of cases for objective review by parties not involved in the case. These cases might focus more on controversial scope of practice issues and would involve a thorough review of records, interview with parties involved, and if relevant, a literature review. And upon completion, there would be recommendations to be shared with all parties. Again, the purpose of this is educative, not punitive. We're also really moving forward with partnering with Pronto International. There are a few midwives in Washington that have worked with Pronto International on some of their programs, but we're partnering with them to work more on EMS and licensed midwife training. They're very simulation based, and we're just planning that out and looking for funding for it. So that is something we're working on, and hopefully next year I'll be really explaining it. We also are starting to work with a program that comes out of Ariadne Lab called Teen Birth. There's several hospitals in Washington that are participating in teen birth, and this is going to be something that's going to spread all over Washington. I think it's going to solve so many problems that we see when we transfer. It really centers clients or patients, and it just includes midwives as part of the team. Without having a lot of time to talk about it, it's, I think, a really exciting opportunity for community midwives here in Washington. And Audrey talked about the CBDR. Smooth Transitions is very interested in that being launched and capturing more information around transfers. And we're not there yet, but you can hold it on that. Okay, yeah. And then last year I highlighted our Washington State infographic, just to remind everybody that that is there on our resource page of our website, and it's available to anyone for education, mostly based for or intended for the hospital or EMS communities. And we did develop a best practice for community midwives regarding hospital transfers, also on the website. It's really a resource around preparing clients for the possibility of transfer. And it's not on my slide, or I would have put it there, but we just got our article published on smooth transitions in the Journal of Midwifery and Women's Health. So called the Enhancing Smooth Transitions, Enhancing Interprofessional Collaboration when Planned Community Births Transfer to Hospital Care. So really exciting, and we're in the process of making that open access. And when it does, it's going to go on the website as well. Okay, next slide. Woo-hoo-hoo. All right, here are the hospitals, and I just kind of threw these hospital names up there. They're actually not all the official names of these hospitals, but these are the hospitals that are participating kind of in a healthy way for the most part in the program. And I have in the light blue the community midwife liaison. So these are the point people for these hospitals. They're aware of when the meetings happen. They know the latest or most updated resources that the hospitals developed, transfer protocols, etc. So these would be people you would reach out to. And Multicare Auburn has a question mark, mostly because we used to work with Multicare Covington. It's a CNM-led birth center, but they closed and are kind of integrating back into Multicare Auburn. So we're in the process of working with them. Next slide, please. Okay, yeah, these are hospitals that have expressed interest in the program or have been involved in the past and need help to get started again. And I realized Grays Harbor isn't called Grays Harbor again. Hospitals change their name all the time. Harbor Regional Health Community Hospital out in Aberdeen. So these are hospitals that I'm just really working with, like getting presentations and kind of getting momentum and getting them going. So they'll be able to move to that previous slide. And then the next slide are the hospitals that once I can move some others out and get them kind of in a healthy place and having at least regular perinatal transfer committee meetings going on and data collection happening, these guys will be the ones that I'm pointing my attention to. So if you transfer to a hospital that's not on any of these last two slides, you think they could benefit from the program, please let me know. Next slide, really quickly. I'm sorry if I'm running over. These, nationally, as we're seeing more people planning to give birth in the community, there are a lot of efforts happening across the U.S. to ensure timely and safe access to hospital-based care when necessary. We've worked with 18 states and jurisdictions at this point looking to replicate the program. We also on our resource page have a document about that, but that's been pretty exciting. And we've decided to start meeting semi-annually with representatives from these states in a kind of a roundtable format where we discuss challenges, successes, share resources, and problem solve together. Last or almost last slide, my contact information, and then the Smooth Transitions website, and then my last slide, which we can probably just go ahead because I'm probably over. Yeah, and I can take any questions. I didn't see what was happening in the chat because I was trying to move so quickly through all this, but
You're good, Melissa. There were no questions in the chat. Kristen was just popping in the citation for the publication
awesome.
you had mentioned.
Great. Thank you all. Thank you for supporting the program. We also run on a very tight budget. No budget.
We feel that. Thanks, Melissa.
Yeah.
All righty. Thank you everyone for sitting through all of those amazing presentations with us. And now we just have some quick reminders and closing. All righty. Before we do our closing, just a reminder that you have your Wild Apricot account, like Kristen mentioned. Make sure it's up to date with the appropriate email and mailing address. If you're not getting our monthly e-newsletters, please double check your email preferences and reach out to us if you have any issues. And then a reminder that renewals for membership are start on February 15th. So please make sure that your payment information is up to date as well.
Can I jump in, V?
Yes.
Sweet. Jen Segadelli, it is my great pleasure and privilege to thank you. Really, I have been involved in MAWS for, gosh, coming up on 15 years. And I have never felt more inspired or grateful for the leadership that you in particular have brought to the board in the last 4 years. At great personal cost. It's not easy being president of MAWS. Anyone who has ever done it will tell you that it's a really hard slog. And I think that the organization and midwives in the state, and possibly also nationally, owe you an incredible debt of gratitude. So I just wanted to say that I am incredibly proud and privileged to call you my friend. I am grateful to have had you as a leader in the short time that I've been back on the board. I admire you desperately. And I sure as hell hope that you take my phone calls when I start panicking and freaking out sometime in January, when I attempt, probably very poorly, to fill your enormous shoes. I also wanted to let you know that you and Jessica and Kristen all have a love package winging its way to you from a grateful crowd here at MAWS. I'll miss you, sister. And yes, if those of you who don't know me, I weep a lot. So the fact that I've made Jen cry is, you know, just par for the course. So thank you also to Kristen, who has been an absolute, I'm going to go ahead and use a very ugly word, stalwart. I don't know where we'd be without you. You've kept some very hard parts of this organization running when there weren't other people stepping up to do it. And we also owe you a tremendous debt of gratitude. So please know that the gift that is coming to you, which sadly is not wine because it's too hard to ship, is sent with great love and admiration. And man, I hope you enjoy some rest. And maybe one day, if you ever decide you want to get back involved, we'll have you on any of the committees at any time. Just say when. Finally, Jessica Swan, who is not on this call, but is off learning to be an amazing nurse and subsequently, I'm sure, nurse midwife. She's trading home birth midwifery for the occasional catching babies and doing lots of Botox, I understand, which, you know, any of us who've done this gig for very long can tell you that that sounds really nice, actually, on occasion. So she has also worked tremendously hard, has brought amazing, I really admired the directness of her communication. She was brilliantly able to match Jen step for step through a very challenging executive committee term. So we miss her desperately as well. She told me this morning that she would miss us too, but she's too tired to do anything. So yeah, she's off doing good stuff. Man, amazing thanks also to the conference committee who have, man, they have just pulled it out year after year after year after year. I'm sure that all of us who are resubmitting our research and checking the boxes on our license applications are, man, we are 100% grateful for the CEUs that you guys have put out over the last few years. So our outgoing board members, thank you for doing a very hard job through a very, very hard year. The incoming board is grateful for the example that you've all set, and we hope that we will do you all proud moving forward. So that's all from me. I love you, outgoing EC. I will miss you.
I don't have words for that, but to membership, my gratitude to you all. I am far too sensible of my defects to not think I have made many missteps and mistakes in leading this ship. But you have held me with grace. It has been an honor to have been chosen by you and to serve you. So thank you for your support. And I'm not going to top anything that Louisa just said or cry anymore today.
Thank you both. I know I've only been part of MAWS for a short, I say short, but yeah, it's been almost a year. But I am very grateful for this team, the outgoing board, as well as the incoming board. You all have done such amazing things, and I'm really appreciative of everything. Alrighty, well, to those, I know a few people have already hopped off, but to those that are still remaining, thank you so much for attending our annual general meeting. We hope to start off strong and hit the ground running in January. And so we hope that you stay connected with us through our social media. We have LinkedIn coming soon for anyone that wants to connect with us on that professional site as well. But we have revamped our website. If any of you haven't had a chance to check it out, please take a couple minutes to do so. If you have any feedback for anything regarding this meeting, our website, what you would like to see from us for the next year, please feel free to email executive-director@washingtonmidwives.org. And with that, I will let everyone go. I hope you have a great rest of your day and happy holidays to anyone that's celebrating.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.